Catherine Robertson, but I was Catherine Bruce.
David Wilson.
Douglas Robertson.
Mary McAleer.
Isabella Young, or Izzy as people know me around here.
Morris Mitchell Pert.
Helen Walker Logan.
At the age of 2, the family moved to Briar Drive in Clydebank, and we were there during the Clydebank Blitz. So, as I say, I was born actually in the house in 60 Crown Avenue, and then when I was about 2, the family moved up to Briar Drive, which was our new houses then, and I was there most of my life. In fact, even when we got married, my wife and I, we stayed in Rosebery Place where the council offices are now.
I would say that I didn't particularly have a very good childhood, because I was 5.5 when it was the Blitz and we lost everything. And I was the oldest of 3, and we thought my father had got lost because he was in the ARP. He was up on top of the roofs trying to put out the incendiary bombs. And the shelter that we were in had opened up. We had the 2 nights of the Blitz in a shelter. And the second night of the Blitz, the shelter opened up and there was 2 babies suffocated with the garbage that came in on top of them. And we were so thankful that my youngest sister wasn't suffocated. It was really terrifying. And when we got out of the shelter, everything was in flames. And we'd walk up, we stayed in the terraces then, and we walked up Radnor Street and all the gas pipes were burning. And we went into Kilby Parish Church to get something to eat. And there wasn't really very much for us to eat either. And that's why I can sympathise with all these Syrian refugees that we're taking in just now. Because we only had the clothes that we were standing in, we had nothing else. My mum and dad lost everything. So my gran and grandpa, they stayed in Clydebank and they were looking for us, and they eventually thought we had been killed, and they eventually found us, and we went to Ayr, where I had a great grandmother stayed and an aunt, and we stayed in Ayr for about 6 years and went to various schools, came back and stayed in Drumchapel. My mother's friend's husband was in the army and she had said that we could go and stay in her house, and we went to Drumchapel Primary School. And then my friend's husband came back from the army and we moved in with my other grandmother in Park Hall.
Didn't go to the secondary school here because my father changed jobs, and we moved through to Kirkintilloch, and I went to Lindsay Academy for first year. I was there until fourth year, and that was the first year of O-levels. The first year O-levels came out. Prior to that it had been lowers and highers, but that was the first year of O-levels, which were sat after 4 years senior secondary education. I was sitting 10 subjects. I was taking 10 subjects, but the French teacher said, don't bother taking the French. So I didn't. So I concentrated on the other 9 and I got them. And in those days, you either passed or you failed. You didn't get a mark, you just passed or failed.
I was born in Govan Drive, which is gone now. It was a tenement building. My father was a baker with Angus the Bakers, and there was another baker's. I was too young. My father actually stopped work when I was 4. I was born when my mother was 42 and she already had 5 girls. They were wee girls probably during the war, and I was a surprise. I said I was a war baby, but my sister reminded me that the war was finished about 2 years when I was born, so she said you were an accident.
I went to school at Levenvale Primary School, and I grew up in Levenvale, so I was there. I was born in Govan Drive, then moved up to Tillahue. One of my parents was in the dye works, the British Salt Factory, and the other one was a coppersmith or something like that.
First, when I was at school, well, at the academy, Forfeit Academy, I really wanted to be an air hostess. They called them air hostesses in these days. I wanted to go into uni and do languages and do that, because you needed languages in that time. But My aunt, my mum's sister, who was so good to me and my godmother, said, no, you're going to go into commercial subjects at the academy and you'll learn all about shorthand and typing, which I did and which was my life, and I still type away like mad.
My father was a baker. My mother, when she was young, was a children's nanny in a big house in Glasgow.
Your dad was a baker?
He was a baker. Baker and confectioner, two different things. You can be bakers, baking bread, cookers, all these things, but a confectioner is decorating cakes, ice and sugar, that type of thing. So he used to do all the wedding cakes, 3-tier wedding cakes. And it was interesting, I don't really want to know this, but if you get a wedding cake, there's like the letter C's and they're all stringy round about it. That's what he did, and you know that took 2 hours. You had to make the letters nice and sugar on a tray, when they hardened, put them into cake, let that set a bit, and then you narrow strings, 5 strings right round the cakes. People didn't realise the work that went into wedding cakes.
I just felt as if I wanted to do something else, maybe get a career or something, you know. My brothers, 2 of my brothers were gas fitters, and my twin brother was a joiner, you know, and one of my brother's girlfriends was a barber, a hairdresser, and I always kind of fancied, you know, so that's how I really sort of thought, I'm not going to do that, rather than be stuck in a factory.
I did some researching for jobs and I decided that I would, 17 I think I was at that time, look for a job in Clydebank and go to night school 3 nights a week and get a degree after that, because it wasn't so easy in those days to go to university because there wasn't enough money. So I'd gone round to Tullis's because I had an uncle who was the chief draftsman in Tullis's, and I started working in there as a secretary. It was quite a big firm then. I think there was about 600 employed, and of course Clydebank was a very, very busy town at that time. I think 30,000 in the yard and 20,000 in Singers, and all the small ancillary works along Livingston Street had a lot of workers in it.
When my father died at the age of 15, my father actually died on my birthday, and that's when I started work. But the first job interview that I went for was in, this is why people don't do this now, but my niece Christine, who's the same age as me, her and I get this interview for, I think it was called Brace in High Street in Dumbarton. It was a shop anyway, but it was in the office. And I had got a B at school, so that was considered relatively clever. I knew you were really clever, but if you got a B, well, you were okay. But on the day I heard that my father had died, there was an interview had been arranged. So it was decided that we should both just go and do the interview for the job. And the whole time I was sitting there, my mind went blank. I thought, my father's lying up in the Henry Brock Hospital. And the guy eventually said, I don't even know why you came here, you can't count. So, you know, things have changed. People wouldn't get away with that now, but that's how people saw you. And I've wrote poetry all my life, since I was young. And when I left school, you had to go to this place behind the Hall Cinema. And the chap interviewed you, it was like a careers officer. And he said, what would you like to do? What are you good at? And I said, well, I love writing poetry. And he said, no, there's, there's no calling for poets in the Vale. So move on. And that's when they sent me for an interview in Burroughs. Back then, your wages came in a paper poke, and it was real money. You never got it through backs or anything into your account. You got a wee paper poke at the end of each week, and it was written on it how much you got. It was actually a robbery in Burroughs back then, and somebody had stolen all the money, the payroll. So I think they were running around like mad trying to get more money out of the bank, pennies, you know, shillings. My wage was £2.6 and 5, so if you imagine that was like £2 notes and whatever the rest was.
There was an advertisement in the paper for young engineers, and I thought, Clydeside, engineering, that's for me, I'm going for it. And I got the job, and that was how it all started. John Brown Engineering was huge. It was the engine works for the shipyard. And the John Brown story in Clydebank starts in 1872, when the firm of G&J Thompson moved downriver from Govan to Clydebank. They wanted a bigger site because they wanted to build bigger ships. They were restricted up the river.
We had a stepfather then, and he got me in McAllister's in Dumbarton. So I was a boat builder at McAllister's first. I served my time in there for 5 years. And that was it. And after that I moved out to Wimpy. And after that I went to John Brown's.
Still doing shorthand and typing. And ended up as private secretary up in Forfar until my husband and I moved down to the Haldane. And it's from there that I then got a job as a private secretary in United Turkey Red Company.
When I left school at 15, I took a job as a message boy in a grocer's shop till I was aged to start an apprenticeship. And then I started an engineering apprenticeship with Dawson and Downey's Engineering. 5-year apprenticeship, but I stayed with the company for 3 years after that. I moved into, they asked me if I would go into the heavy engineering side, what they call horizontal boring mills, big machines. And it was a big move because I learned a lot in that as well, you know.
Well, I left because my aunt had a shop and she had no family, she wanted me to go and help her. But after it was a year there, she didn't keep well, they decided to sell the shop. So I got a job in the UTR Croft in the office, and that was where I was for the rest of them. Started message girl, and I ended up one of the head clerkesses. So I worked hard.
Well, we had the old typewriters, and it was very good because there was a lot of people worked in there. And if you had to go a message down into the workshop, the men all just battered at the steel work that they were making because they were doing the interiors of washing machines. It was very noisy. And I worked for one of the directors there.
You sat with the people that you were actually working with, more the temps and things than the people who were permanent members of staff, because there was actually no chance of you getting a permanent job at that time. I think those kind of days where you were offered a permanent contract were quite a long time before I started. It was all just temporary people they were bringing in. And then in Polaroid as well, we'd started off with quite good money. And then by the next time that I was brought in, we were told that compared to, I think it was about £7.50 an hour, we were now going to be getting about £5.70 an hour. And it was just a case of like it or leave it. You know, it's up to you if you want to come back at that. Because quite a lot of the work actually went to China, which was a lot cheaper labour and things. So we just took it, you know, because at the end of the day it was work.
At the start, if I remember rightly, I think the offices started about around 8 or half 8, I'm not sure. But the factory staff started earlier. But you always clocked in, there was a board on the wall and everybody had their card. And you had to clock in and clock out. Some people clocked their pals in if they were running late, you know. But if you get caught, it was serious. Now I worked in when I left the mailroom, you did the mailroom for a year and then you progressed on. They would find you a job in wherever. Some girls went into the assembly and the CI commercial inspection, which was at the end of the lines in the other factory, and they checked the machines over at last point before they went out. But they gave me a job in production control. And I honestly couldn't tell you what I was doing because I'd done it for a year. It was a wee machine and I had to put pan cards through it, and there was people called chasers who took the stuff out to the line, and it must have been something to do with the manufacturing side, but you had to write an equation on this pan card and pass it on, and nobody ever really explained what the sum was to be, so I just wrote something, sent it out, and I think the chasers used to just fix it. You know, they go, no, that can't be right.
Everybody knew each other. There was fathers, there was sons, there was brothers, there was cousins, there was neighbours. Everybody knew each other. Contrary to what you would think, Red Clydeside, unions, dispute with management, us and them, there were very few days of lost production in there. The guys took a great pride in what they were doing, and they would work all hours to meet the shipping day, because a ship would come in to Glasgow, and the turbine had to be there to get to and they jumped through hoops to get that turbine out the door on time. It was a great place to work.
7 in the morning you started, and but see now, you just started right away, and you worked to a tea break at 10 o'clock, and after that 12 o'clock, and after that you went to 4:30, and after that it was home. So it was busy, no bad, but all the same. One time when it wasn't John Brown's at this time, it was the marathon, we were going to put windows in, and they had to go up in this crane. I didn't enjoy that. I did. But apart from that, everything else was brilliant. The John Brown's years were lovely, good years.
Partly because of a friend of mine, he worked in the factory in Singer, and he was quite keen for me to go in there, you know, because he had this idea in mind about starting a Singer pipe band, and I had also thought at that time, well, I'd quite like to go into the tool room and sing and see how they do things, yeah. So it was from about 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, but again, it was such a complex place. There were people who worked on different shift patterns from that. Some departments ran all night as well, you know.
Well, there was the usual thing, being on my own with my own office. I had to do the filing and any postage, because I didn't have an assistant, it was just me. And anything else that was required, the phone, of course, answering the phone. My boss was lovely. To be quite honest, I can't even remember his name now, it's so long ago. So much has happened in my life, but he was lovely, and I got on very well with him. And I made one particular friend, Betty McGowan, her name was. I can't even tell you if she's still alive or not. She was a wee bit older than me, and eventually she became godmother to one of my children. But the others were more workers in the actual factory.
I was started just as a message girl, 15-year-old message girl, but it was a good start because it took me through nearly every department. They didn't have phones to all departments in these days, so the message came through to the main office of the telephone place, and they printed it, and I had to take it to the manager at each place. It meant I was seeing every department, and I think I learnt more doing that, maybe standing watching them. I would get in the papers with the hours the men had worked, and then I had to work out what rates they got, how much their wages were going to be paid.
A big hole in my life if they never brought singers to Clydebank. To me, singers was a magic place. I thought people died and went to singers. I thought it was heaven, so I did. As I say, my big mate, singers, oh. When he talks about singers, his mouth goes, didn't like it at all.
Brilliant, because you had to meet your own entertainment. So you did, like so nowadays, they're on the phones all the time, but you had to go out and play football and all that. You didn't have any televisions, you know, in them days. So it was amazing. You know, nowadays it's all different, all change.
And I look back on it now, it was quite an experience, you know, because at that time they were still building steam pumps, great huge steam pumps, and you know, it was nice to be able to be involved in steam motivation before all the other fancy things come in.
Being there and working there for that time changed my life as in starting dressmaking, because of being able to get some of the material there and use my old hand machine. Now it's a flashy thing that sometimes I can't forget how to work the thing.
Being part of the community, because you know, you'd go into a club and there'd be a top line artist on it, wouldn't it be? You know, it's hard to describe it, and yeah, it was good. And that's what made it. You knew when the weekend came, the fun time started. Although most of us had to work Sundays to make an ends meet, because you get double time on a Sunday, so that was the day to work. Yeah, and it was it was a far, I would say, happier place. Most folk were in employment. There was there's one or two that weren't, but vast majority you could get a job.
Clydebank was quite a wealthy borough, and the men were fully employed for a long while when I was younger, and then they hit the recession in the 70s, and it was very, very sad for us all to see the way that it went, and I still don't like what's happening just now. You know, I feel that we're needing more industry and to help the young people get employment.
I recall happy days, childhood days when you were free to go out and play. Things were much better, and children played games, not games that required a lot of money, but like Peaver, skipping ropes, but high spy, up and down closes. You get out for running up and down closes. But we had fun, and it didn't cost money, because none of our parents had money to spend, and most of us were families, a good few in the families. But we made it our own fun.